What's up, everybody? It's Alex, and I'm back with another For the Love of Hoops podcast. It's our first one of the 2017-2018 season. So I wanted to start off talking about the first 10 games. And it's extremely early. It's really too early to say anything concrete or to make any long-term predictions, but there's plenty of trends that have already started to take place that I think are really important to look at now, and I think they might play out in the future and the rest of the season that are already starting to take place with some teams. So, starting off, how I think we'll break this down is so far in the first 10 games, impressed with your performance and not impressed with your performance. So, who are the obvious ones? I guess we'll talk team wise first of all. In the Eastern Conference, I think it's obvious that Kyrie Irving and the rest of the Boston Celtics are really impressing. Having a 9-2 record, being the first team to lose 2 games, start off the season losing 2 games and then win 9 straight, I think that's pretty impressive. And it goes without saying, doing this without Gordon Hayward. I think that obviously as the season plays out, things will even out for them, but it's interesting to see how Kyrie is thriving in the system with Brad Stevens and the rest of the. He's actually playing really well with the rest of the players. He's playing much better defense, averaging more steals, and he's doing a good job of getting everybody else involved. But he said something like, "Our system hasn't failed us yet," and I think that even though I think that they'll lose more games throughout the rest of the season, I think that it's a good sign to see that they're doing this well, considering what's going on. I think that other teams that impress are Detroit and Orlando, but I think that's more of like an early season type of thing. There's definitely things to be impressed with on Detroit with Andre Drummond, especially his free throw shooting, is making a huge impact because you could see how detrimental it was before and how much more successful he makes that team now. Orlando, I don't even think they'll finish over 500 in my opinion, but they're definitely impressing for what they have. They're definitely been considered one of the worst teams in the league for a long time, and to see that they're even 2 games above 500 in the first 10 games is pretty impressive. Aaron Gordon's looking good. He's definitely going to develop into one of the best players in the league, I'm sure. And other than that, I don't really know how they're doing so well, but they are, and their young players are playing well. And I think that it'll even out for them. Philadelphia definitely been impressive, but I think any wins for Philadelphia is impressive when you look at how little they've won in the last couple of seasons. They're currently without Markel Fultz. You can imagine how good they're going to be if they could stay healthy, and when their big three of Embiid, Simmons, and Fultz really start to develop, I think they're going to be scary. I think New York is impressing because they're winning games in general, pretty much due to Kristaps. He's just been on an absolute tear, but they're playing okay, which is pretty impressive because I don't think anybody expected that. So it looks like there's a few things to look forward to in that team that maybe a lot of people didn't see at first. Moving to the Western Conference, teams that have been on top are still on top. The first two are Houston and Golden State. Minnesota, a lot of people have expected them to make a jump, myself included. And in the first 10 games, they've definitely shown some more life and a lot more potential in the last year. So obviously having a lot more players, a lot more experience, and star players such as Jimmy Butler, they'll definitely see more wins. I think Memphis, I think they're overlooked a lot and they definitely don't get the respect they deserve, but they've moved on. They've started to make a culture change, and I think that they're doing better than a lot of people expected. I don't know how well they'll do moving forward, but they're doing well right now. Portland, I think they have definitely the potential to be a playoff team this year yet again because Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, they make up one of the best backcourts, and I think if they can continue that, they'll be dangerous. San Antonio is impressive because they have yet to play a game with Kawhi Leonard, and they're still 2 games above 500, but I guess you could attribute all of that to Greg Popovich and his coaching ability. The Clippers were impressive at first, and now they seem to have evened out. I know they've battled injuries with Milos Teodosic, but they're definitely looking good. Blake Griffin's looking good, and I think that they'll have a good season for sure. Moving on to players that I'm impressed with their performance, you can definitely say Giannis. I think everybody would say that he's on an absolute tear. He's averaging more than 30 points a game in the first 10 games. So, you could probably imagine that it would go down a little bit. There's potential he can keep it there, and I think that he's definitely an obvious MVP candidate. And with Eric Bledsoe now on the Bucks, I think that they will have a better record than they would without him. So that definitely raises his chances, raises his win shares, and will get him more votes with a better record at the end of the season. Kristaps has made an incredible jump, especially offensively for how young he is. The first 10 games, he's averaging 30.2 points a game. He's playing well all around, and he's the only reason New York has as many wins as they have. And it looks like they have some potential moving away from the Carmelo Anthony era. James Harden, you could expect him to be up there. LeBron James is obviously playing well, averaging 28.8 points a game. He's always going to be solid. DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis are the fifth and sixth scorers in the league, so it's impressive to see that they're both on the same team. They're both in the front court. And I think that because of how well they play, they'll definitely improve New Orleans' record moving down the line. And to finish off this category, we have Ben Simmons, who in 9 games has averaged 18 points, 9.8 rebounds, and 8.2 assists, which is unreal for a rookie. I mean, you can say, yeah, he redshirted the first season. Now he's, he may have an advantage over the rest of the rookies, but regardless, that's an incredible stat line for a 21-year-old rookie in this league. Now, to start off our I'm not impressed with your performance category, we have everybody else on the Cavaliers, including Tyronn Lue, except LeBron James. When I'm talking about this, LeBron James 100% exempt from this category. He's the only one who's really been pulling his own weight and doing more. He's pulling weight for everybody else like he usually does when other players don't play as well as they should. But I'm talking about the rest of the starters and even the bench. I think that Dwayne Wade is older and he realizes that he's older, thus moving himself to the bench for the first time in his career. But regardless of where he is, they have players on the bench. They have players they can start with. I think you have to mention the fact that Tristan Thompson is a player who's been a part of their offensive rotation and defensive rotation for years. And, playing without him is definitely hard. Even if he doesn't put up insane numbers, he definitely does a lot of things on the court that the other players will have to account for. Again, it's early. And there's a bunch of new players and they need to gel, but I think that overall they could be playing better, especially than the record. My other team for this category is OKC, and again, like I said for the 100th time, it's early, so you can't really blame them, but I think that with that much star power, you'd expect, or at least I would expect them to have a better record. And I think that even, it takes time to gel. It takes time for players with high usage rates to gel, even if you do have an MVP point guard like Russell Westbrook. It's going to take time for these stars to play on the ball and off the ball with each other. But I think that they'll definitely improve. But so far, I'm definitely not impressed with their performance. Some players whose performance I'm not impressed with. Firstly, I would say Dwayne Wade. And I mean, I know you're 35, but, come on, man. I think I think that he could definitely put up better numbers than he's been putting up. And I think that he will. But in the first 10 games, I think the whole situation there and moving himself away as a starter and them still not playing as well, I think, it's interesting to see a player with his veteran leadership and that kind of caliber seeing a way of stepping up as moving away from the starting lineup. I'm not sure. He knows more about that than I do, and I guess we'll see how it plays out. I guess we'll see if he's called back into the starting lineup. I guess, we'll see where it goes from there, but I'm definitely not impressed with his performance. And my second player ending off this category is Kyle Lowry. And a lot of people, I guess, would debate, paying a 31-year-old player $100 million over 3 seasons. I definitely think that's a ton of money. And the only way it would pay off is if he plays well. He plays as well as he could, maybe even better than we've seen, or at least as well as we've seen him play in his best seasons, best games. But to start off the season with 12 points, 5 rebounds, and 6.6 assists, on 37.6% shooting from the field and 32.7% shooting from the three. He's definitely, it's early in the season, but he's definitely capable of much more than this, especially in the first 10 games, especially after being signed this much money. You would expect a player to play better, to want to make his team not regret giving them that money, not regret signing him and keeping him in the long term. So I'm sure he'll definitely play better, but to see how Kyle Lowry is playing in the new Toronto Raptors system is a little bit scary, even if it's a little bit early. But he's definitely going to have to get those numbers up too, aside from all of that, if he's going to be even close to worth $100 million over 3 years. Anyway, everybody, thanks so much for checking out my first podcast of the season. There'll be plenty more like this to check into as the season goes on and plenty more to talk about. So, till then, we'll talk to you next time.